about this, in the end, when the whole story comes out, they're going to see that this so-called independent counsel who was put in there by a political hack to do the jobs of political hacks is nothing more than on a vendetta against the President of the United States. And there's absolutely not going to be any resignations, any such thing as that. But I tell you what there's going to be. There's going to be a war. But the friends of the President are disgusted by these kinds of tactics, and we're going to fight, and we're going to fight very hard to defend this President.
A war between whom?
Between the friends of the President and the independent counsel. That's exactly who it's between. And between these scuzzy, slimy tactics of wiring people up, of getting them in hotel bars, of threatening to arrest their parents and all that kind of foolishness. And you know what? When this whole Star thing started, I told the American people about it, and they can see that I'm right in spades. They can see that I'm right in spades. We start out with a land deal, and now we're traipsing around with some 24-year-old intern. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Mr. Carville, why doesn't the President of the United States just come forward and answer every question about this and talk to the American people rather than hiding behind, as you described it, a rope-a-dope legal strategy?
No. What I'm saying is he has denied. He has come forward and said that there was no improper relationship. And in due course, at the proper time, and there's no argument between the political people and the lawyers, is you go out there for 2 hours and you got Mr. Starr and all of his people and they're doing that, and then somebody selectively leaks this and it goes back and forth. We're not dealing with honorable people here. The President said that he will cooperate with the investigation. I'm sure that he will, but there's not going to be any great 2-hour stand-up, et cetera, et cetera. He has denied that anything as improper has happened to the American people. He's denied it to his cabinet. He's denied it to his friends. His wife, by the way, is very much a pawball. This is very much in a fighting mood and is rallying the troops, and I'm very glad to report that, and I'm very glad that that's happening. You know, anything that you do, they just, you know, the Star people are going to come up and say something else. If the Star people want to know something, they can call Mr. Kendall. He's at Williams and Conley, and they can ask him about it, and he'll be glad to provide them the information that they're entitled to under the law.
Newsweek magazine reports today that the President is considering admitting that he had a sexual relationship with Monica Lewinsky. If, in fact, that occurs, will you change your views?
Mr. Russell, I've been on your show probably 10 or 15 times, and you know I don't respond to hypotheticals, and I don't believe that report. I have never heard anything about that, and I think the people that I talked to, if something like that was going on, I would know about it.
Will the President talk about this in his State of the Union message?
I seriously doubt it. I'd be surprised if he did.
When will we hear from the President?
Well, I think you've heard from the President on any number of occasions, and he's the President. I think, you know, people will continue to ask him. I don't think this is, quite frankly, I don't think the story is going anywhere for the near future, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of time for people to ask him questions or to do whatever.
Final question, James Carville. You said there's going to be a war between friends of Bill Clinton and Kenneth Starr.
I've been in this war for a long time, and as the American people know, I was the first person to sound the trumpet on this, and everything that I predicted and everything I said it has come to fruition. And I can't tell you the number of people that are friends of the President that said, gee, we didn't realize how right you were, James. It was a lonely war you were out there fighting, but I am proud to have fought it, and I'm proud to continue to fight it.
Who's going to win that war and why?
Well, I think the President's going. I mean, I think the President is going to come out of this thing just fine, because I think people are repulsed by this, and the President said nothing improper happened, and I think in the end they're going to see this as nothing more than the President's political enemies on a vendetta that are out to get him, and they can see these selective leaks, they can see this unverified material being gone, and just let them go ahead and do that, because I think there's going to be an investigation when it's over, and I think it's going to be an investigation of the leak of material out of the independent counsel's office. I really believe that.
That has to be the last word. James Carville, thank you very much for joining us this Sunday morning.
Thank you, Tim.
Coming next, what does all this mean? Expert insight and analysis from Michael Isikoff of Newsweek, Stuart Taylor of the National Journal, William Safire of the New York Times, and Matt Drudge of the Internet Drudge Report. Then, the Pope's pilgrimage to Cuba. We'll talk to John Cardinal O'Connor, Bernard Cardinal Law. The Pope lectures Fidel Castro.
Meet the Press is sponsored by Bayer Corporation, a research-based company in healthcare, chemicals, and imaging technologies.
Most people know us as the inventors of a wonder drug, but we also help make fabrics stronger, homes more energy efficient, animals healthier, and we're helping to lead the way in biotech research.
So much good we can do for each other. Oh, what a world it can be.
Bayer. In healthcare, chemicals, and imaging technologies, we cure more headaches than you think.
Buy hamburger, cook it up, and you'll discover you have a whole lot of something you don't even want. Try Harvest Burgers from who else? Green Giant. And get the flavor without all the fat. They're all vegetable, with far less fat than hamburger, no cholesterol, and lots of taste. Harvest Burgers from Green Giant. Everything you want from a burger, without everything you don't.
Why am I always the last to know? When we got the Peterson account, I was the last to know. The merger, last to know. Hey, we got a new logo?
Introducing Ship Alert from FedEx.com. More than tracking, it can email you the moment a package has been shipped.
First to know. Mr. Smith, the shipment just left Italy, and you heard it here first.
Smith was transferred a month ago.
Of course he was. I knew that.
Be the first to know with FedEx Ship Alert.
What can EDS do for a business? With EDS, a clothing manufacturer in Kelwood, is raising quality and profits without raising prices. Del Monte is able to predict the perfect point to pick their peaches. And all 21 million of Taiwan citizens are now covered by health insurance. Now, what can we do for your business? EDS, a more productive way of working.
What?
Jake, I didn't know who to call. We've been hacked.
Hacked? How?
Over the web. They broke into the R&D server.
Who?
We don't know. Oh, gosh, it must be 4 in the morning where you are. You really can't do anything from there. Why don't you just go back to sleep?
We're back, gentlemen. As we begin our roundtable, I want to show you some footage. This is the day after the election, and the President of the United States returning to the White House and greeting some well-wishers. There's the President. That is Monica Lewinsky, the former White House intern. They embrace. He then, as you can see, pats her on the back, and they engage in some conversation. This is the day after the election on the lawn of the White House. That's Monica Lewinsky in the beret and President Bill Clinton. Michael Isikoff, that footage seems to indicate a level of familiarity, which I think would be fair to say is not common between the President and a typical White House intern.
And there's a lot of other evidence for, at a minimum, that level of familiarity. And one of the things we reported in Newsweek this week is a scene of somebody who accompanies Monica Lewinsky to the White House Christmas party in December 1996. They go through the receiving line, and this person was stunned. The President instantly recognizes Lewinsky, hugs her, embraces her, says, "Hi, Monica." This person did not believe that found it strange that there was that kind of intimacy between the President and the intern.
Newsweek has been leading the way on this story. What new information do you have to report this morning?
Well, we do publish extensive excerpts from those transcripts, and people can read them in context and see that if you read them, it is not a young woman who seems to be boasting or bragging about a relationship. It sounds like a woman who is anguished and very distraught over the dilemma she's in because she's been deposed and her friends have been deposed in the case, and the talk is how to protect the President, not to hurt him.
Stuart Taylor, the President involved in the Paula Jones case has made some legal pleadings. You have something with you this morning. What did he say as regards to whether or not he had ever engaged in improper conduct with anyone?
Verbatim, in pleadings filed in December by Bob Bennett answering the Paula Jones complaint, he says, President Clinton denies that he engaged in improper, that's the key word, conduct with respect to plaintiff, that's Paula Jones, or any other woman. Now, if the question is he had intimate physical relationships with any other woman, nobody in the country would believe it. I think it's quite clear that what we're seeing here from Mr. Carville and others is a classic Clinton non-denial denial strategy. They say no improper conduct. People hear it and think it means no sexual conduct, no intimate physical conduct. There's this hidden reservation that it means something like except between consenting adults or something like that.
I asked Mr. Carville whether the President had any kind of sex, and he said no.
I think the pattern is that when pinned down, they will say that, but remember, there's a record of the president saying that certain kinds of activity that most people would consider sex aren't sex. So there's still that little ambiguity, but all of these ambiguities, and we heard lots of the same stuff during the Jennifer Flowers episode. He's asked on 60 Minutes, are you denying you had a 12-year affair? Yes. Are you denying you had any affair? It wasn't yes, it was I've said that, and so has she. When backed into a corner, you get the flat denial, and that's certainly probably what happened in this deposition last Saturday. But the first line of defense is always the non-denial denial.
Matt Drudge of the Drudge Report, you've been covering this rather aggressively on the internet. What's your take?
Shock, and very much concerned that there's been deception for years coming out of this White House. I mean, this intern relationship didn't happen last week. It happened over a course of a year and a half. And I'm concerned also there's a press corps that wasn't monitoring the situation close enough. I've been told if Mr. Clinton asks for the release of his deposition in the Paula Jones case, the gag order may be lifted for the specific release of this. I think this is one stroke he could do immediately by asking the court down in Little Rock to release his deposition. And again, it's my understanding from sources down there that they would grant it. And the people would get to see exactly what he said. Stop hiding behind gag orders. This is the wrong time to do this when you have so much at stake.
There have been reports that on the tapes between Monica Lewinsky and Linda Tripp, there are discussions of other women, including other White House staffers involved with the president. Do you have any information on that?
There is talk all over this town. Another White House staffer is going to come out from behind the curtains this week. If this is the case, and you couple this with the headline that the New York Post has, there are hundreds, according to Ms. Lewinsky, quoting Clinton, we're in for a huge shock that goes beyond a specific episode. It's a whole psychosis taking place in the White House.
Mr. Sapphire, Bill Sapphire, you're an expert with words. The President of the United States has an interesting history. Jennifer Flowers' story is not correct, and then reportedly confirms an affair with her under oath. I didn't inhale with his discussion of marijuana. Will these kinds of legalisms, these kinds of finessing, work in this situation?
First, Tim, I may be the last person in America who still thinks that the financial relationship that Bill Clinton has with the Riyadi family in Indonesia is a lot more important than any possible sexual relationship he had with a White House aide. But I guess I'm a weirdo. On the splitting hairs, we have to allow for the possibility that the president is telling his version of the truth. And when he says there was no improper sexual relationship, perhaps in his mind he's thinking of, there he is in the White House, and it can be a lonely job. And he's going through a midlife crisis around 50. And here's this adoring, fun young thing. And over the course of 18 months, he becomes friendly with her and a kind of mentor to her and gets some genuine pleasure out of being with her and talking to her late at night on the telephone or in person. Now, it may be that he slipped a few times and some sex was involved. But that's why he can say that, truthfully in his own mind, that it was not primarily a sexual relationship. And that, I think, may be at the heart of his defense.
Would that fly with the American people? A president having sex with a White House intern in the White House, but he's saying because it was a certain type of sex, it was not improper, and I should keep my job.
Will it fly? It will elicit great disapproval. But will it drive him from the White House? I don't know. I think what they're trying to do is say, let's separate the relationship from crime. Did he or did he not suborn perjury? And when it comes down to that, as Stuart Taylor here can tell you, it'll be a tough thing to prove, particularly when Vernon Jordan or the president can say, I never told her to lie. Now, if instead he had said, we can count on you, can't we? Or you're discreet, aren't you? Is that saying lie? You see where there's a gray area there.
Stuart Taylor, in his deposition in the Paula Jones case, President Clinton, it's reported, said that he did not have a sexual relationship with Monica Lewinsky. In a civil case, you have a chance to reread your deposition before you sign it, and you can change it or amend it. Now, this would be a material change, but if the president decided to change his sworn statement that, well, when I was asked that question about improper, this was my definition, and in hindsight, I'm changing my view. Is that a possibility?
I never say anything's impossible, but it seems to me a very remote one for a number of reasons. First, I would imagine Paula Jones's lawyers didn't settle for a general denial. They would have asked very specific questions, and he would have had to deny all kinds of things that aren't that I'm not going to mention on camera. It's not going to be, did you have an improper relationship? It's going to be, did her lips ever, you know, that sort of thing. But in addition, I think there is a right to correct yourself in a perjury-type situation if it's prompt and spontaneous and seems to be just either a correction of the record or kind of a guilty conscience. If there's overwhelming proof casting doubt on the credibility of the original statement that comes, and then you say, come to think of it, I'm going to change that, I don't think it would do much good. One other point in response to Bill, I think you're right that subornation of perjury is very hard to prove, but there's a little piece of evidence here that might make it less hard if they can prove a sexual relationship than usual. Monica Lewinsky filed an affidavit in Bill Clinton's case, Paula Jones versus Bill Clinton, in early January that said no sexual relationship. I would assume that Bob Bennett, the president's lawyer, showed him that affidavit or told him what was in it when he was preparing him for his own deposition. At that point, he was on notice that if in fact there was a sexual relationship, Monica Lewinsky had lied under oath on his behalf, and whatever ambiguity there might have been in the conversations at the time they were had would be gone.
Michael Isikoff, you heard James Carville say this is war between friends of Bill Clinton and Kenneth Starr. Are you surprised by that strategy?
Well, it's certainly in keeping with Mr. Carville's aggressive damage control PR efforts on behalf of the president. The problem is that what we didn't hear from Mr. Carville was a full explanation and a plausible storyline that the president and his defenders can stand behind. And that's, I think, been the most damaging thing for the president this week and the most unsettling thing for his supporters. Look, the Clinton camp and this Clinton White House is certainly used to a lot of charges being thrown at them and a lot of allegations made. But in every past case, they are always right back in their accuser's face with the rapid response. They get out the evidence that supports their side of things, and they've been able to bat down allegation after allegation, even when a lot of them look to a lot of people as pretty serious. This is the one where I think the most stunning thing to people in Washington has been the lack of response, the tepid response, those one comments to that one day, and then total silence on what the true facts are.
Matt Drudge, James Carville declared war this morning. What do you make of it?
Well, I think we're going to give them some more. And if this is how they're going to go out, if this is going to be their tack to not go quietly, but to go out screaming and kicking, when you've got a line of women who have testified under oath that they've had relationships with this man that have been improper, among other things, which I think we'll find out this week. I think the upcoming week, you thought last week was bad. This upcoming week is going to be one of the worst weeks in the history of this country if they're going to take a attack that this is all made up and this is all Ken Starr.
What do you make of Mr. Carville's argument that these are charges being made by political enemies of the president?
Well, this would, if this is their tact to go after the accuser, to accuse the accuser, and to try to get in front of what's actually happening by lying on top of lies, I think we're going to have such serious trouble, and his legacy is going to be that, just that. Cover-up does work only to a certain degree, and I think it has worked for years and years because of a press corps who has been sleeping. But I think the clock is stuck at midnight.
Bill Sapphire, front page of your newspaper, the New York Times, said that the administration is seriously considering attacking Iraq as soon as Friday, probably within the next few weeks, unless Saddam Hussein allows chemical weapons inspections. There's a movie called Wag the Dog that is now being viewed in screens all across the country. The president has brought Harry Thompson back to Washington, his movie producer friend. How is America, how is the world going to respond to a military attack to Iraq in the middle of this crisis?
Tim, I've never been soft on Clinton. I can't be accused of that. I think when it comes down to putting the lives of Americans in danger, he will act like a patriot. He will do what is the right thing. I don't go for this talk of Carville's war or Mr. Drudge's response. I think there will be a pulling back now by everybody a little bit, not only the media, but both the White House and the people prosecuting him, to explore what we really know and what the accusations will be and what the defense will be. And I think certainly Republicans are wise to shut up and let this progress. And I think most of the American public, which is really turned off at what looks like terrible, terrible moral behavior, will say, wait a minute, we've got a president, he's the only president we have, and when it comes to acting on behalf of the nation, we can argue with him on Medicare and things like that, but when it comes to putting lives in danger, he is going to be acting as the commander-in-chief and not a defendant in the case.
Do you believe Bill Clinton survives this crisis without resigning or being impeached?
I think it's too soon to say. I think he's going to fight, in his own words, till the last dog dies. It could be the last dog will die, and that would be when Tom Daschle and Dick Eberhart and Ted Kennedy comes to visit him the way Goldwater came to visit Nixon.
That has to be the last word.
That's too long from now.
William Safire, Matt Drudge, Stuart Taylor, Michael Isikoff, thank you all for joining us this morning for a most interesting discussion.